Thanks, John. After listening to Rob, and Rob's been a friend and a colleague for many years, but it's nice to know if I ever give up the complex world of superannuation, I've got a career in fast food. You know? Look, thanks, John. The super industry is one of the nation's greatest assets. And while we all mightn't sort of think about it too often, or if we do, we probably think of the complexities and the ever constant rule changes. And I think they're certainly something we have to wrestle with. The fact of the matter is that we have in this nation, and we probably should be very grateful for the architects of it, a pool of assets worth $2 trillion. That's 125% of the gross domestic product of the country. That is an enormous powerhouse in terms of economic stability, and it's been recognised by the RBA as well as providing during the global crisis an enormous stabiliser in terms of recapitalising the markets when markets were under significant pressure. Because that's what super funds do. With the compulsory nature of our super guarantee system, they keep buying. No matter what the cycle is, the super funds keep buying the market. The challenge, of course, is the super funds and the system is so big that I think even local domestic funds management houses now are limited to a certain capacity of being able to cope with the mandates that are coming through, which is why you're seeing a trend in the industry for some of the bigger funds to start insourcing some of those funds management. I was very pleased that Bill talked about the growth sectors of health and education because, of course, with our fund, which is about the third largest in the country, 66% of our members and the wealth resides in the health and education sector. And with an ageing population, it's an extremely fast-growing sector. One of my challenges, of course, is to be relevant. It's all very well to have this pool of assets, and we certainly focus on the needs of our members in terms of retirement. But the investment of those funds needs to be relevant to the Australian economy at large, as well as obviously taking advantage of overseas opportunities. And indeed, people in this room would be provide or look at super funds as a provider of capital and for opportunities. The dilemma we've got at the moment is there's a lot of capital around fighting for some very, very scarce assets. And the unlisted markets, bearing in mind super funds need to provide regular income streams to their members going forward, moving away from lump sums but providing that regular flow of income. The assets, therefore, they're looking for in many cases are these assets which can remain more stable but derive or produce a regular income during volatile markets. That's why infrastructure assets. You've seen things like Port Botany and the Newcastle Port, Port of Melbourne will be soon sort of put on the auction table. These are going to be fiercely contested assets, and not just by Australian funds, but by overseas sovereign funds, Canadian pension funds as well. So it's a very, very tight market and a hotly contested market. Also, some of these people from overseas have lower costs of capital too. So the amount of capital that they would devote to investing in an Australian infrastructure asset is quite substantial. On the retirement side, I've got to say it's a challenge for individuals with low interest rates, which Bill outlined before. People who wish to enter retirement and have conservative investments and look at the cash rate are finding it harder and harder to do that. With proposed government changes to people getting part pensions, that also puts greater pressure on would-be retirees. So they're faced with either going further out on the risk curve in terms of where they invest, or they're extending their working life, which in some cases might be possible, in some industries it's not. But as I said, I think from our point of view, we don't disagree with a lot of things that Bill said about the economy and where it's going. From our members' perspective, of course, we need to provide good financial advice. You're watching big super funds, by the way, play in spaces that traditionally they haven't played in before, and traditionally have been played or sort of dominated, I suppose, by the banks. Financial advice is certainly a big part of that, and that's a growth sector for the superannuation industry, because more and more it is a complex system. There's no question, and the tax rates do change, the conditions of release do change. So we have now opened 5, 6 regional offices. Like a lot of financial players, we're looking at the digital space as to how to deliver those services more efficiently. And as I said, with health and education making up 66% of our membership, sometimes the capacity to work longer is not an option for them. I might just leave it at that. I'll be happy to take questions later, but it's certainly an exciting time to take the Prime Minister's words, to be involved in being an active player in the Australian community, and for super to make such a major contribution too.